He said you might know put down fame.
Rock. Ain't shit Rock wouldn't do.
We about to be back up in the big way.
When and where?
Changing the game all over again.
This gonna pay, man.
Now, for a trailer, that's probably the shortest and most vague trailer episode we've seen in a very long time. They ain't giving too much away, which I don't mind. I think I've said it before during season 3 of Ghost. I think there were some teasers and trailers which gave away way too much. They had a teaser with Lauren which pretty much confirmed she was still breathing. So definitely no complaints from me. There's still a lot more to dig into. In terms of whether there is a break after episode 7, I'm not 100% sure, because at the time of this recording, there's nothing official. Normally the break is after episode 5 or 8, but I am reading a lot of things online which do suggest it could potentially be after episode 4 or 7. But when there is something official, I'll definitely confirm it on my socials and a few of my next breakdowns. Now, in terms of what's next with Kanan believing that Rock was the one who paid to have Famous killed, we're going to see Jukebox's reaction and response. With Rock's empire, Unique's made his move and now Rock is about to make hers. Now, you never bet against Rock, but she really is up against it like never before. So let's see how she changes the game this time around, because lurking in the shadows is Unique. Stfano also wants to move her to the side, and we don't know where Snaps and Pop fall into the equation either just yet. There's also the fallout from Joyce's death. How did the Thomas family react? As usual, we're going to be diving deep into all the main talking points, as well as a few extra scenes from various teasers and trailers that do match up to episode 8. But let's take a look at the title and synopsis. Now, the title of episode 8 is Street Struck, and the synopsis reads: Rock goes on the offensive as Marvin and Lou attempt to contain escalating situations. Jukebox joins the search for a missing OC, while Kanan looks into his theory on what happened with Famous. Now, in regards to the episode title, we haven't broken down too many for season 4, because most of them have been pretty much straightforward. But for this one, Street Struck, there's actually a song named Street Struck by Big L, which was released back in the mid-90s. He spoke about how he used to live the street life, how he turned his life around, how there were others in the streets who had dreams, but gave them up because they were street struck. Now, the interesting thing about this episode title is, Coleman was later murdered in a drive-by, and what do we see here? Potentially could be something very similar. There might be something in it, there may not be, but we know how Sasha Penn and the writers really love to pay attention to all the small details, pay homage to the 90s era, the things that have happened in the past, and it may just be something to keep in mind heading into episode 8. It was a time where there were a lot of drive-bys. We even had Kanan mention it in conversation with Dre back in Power. So that's a bit on the episode title. Let's move on to the hot topic of Famous's death.
He said you might know put down fame.
Rock.
Now, we all saw Kanan towards the end of episode 407. He saw Rock delivering a fat envelope to a couple of law enforcement officers. They were actually the same officers that were harassing Rock back in season 3. But in his mind, he's thinking that Rock had something to do with Famous's murder. We all know both Duke and Kanan have been looking for answers. They took it to the streets back in 406 with Freddy's crew, where they said it could potentially be law enforcement. Again, in 407, Duke mentioned that if it was law enforcement, that hit still would have been called from the streets, which is why Kanan is putting 2 plus 2 together. But does it equal 4, or are we talking about a Tejada 2 plus 2? We've got him in conversation with Jukebox telling him that he knows who put down Fame. It was Rock. But I'm not 100% sure now. There are 2 ways this could potentially play out. Either Rock was definitely behind it, and it serves as a plot device to completely tear these relationships apart. We've spoken about how it could potentially impact Rock and Lou, how it could potentially impact Rock and Jukebox. Again, the same goes with Rock and Kanan. Or, I'm genuinely thinking it could even potentially be a red herring. Is it Rock's reputation going against her? Could it potentially be a red herring? We're definitely going to be diving deeper into it when we do an updated breakdown in terms of the investigation into Famous, which is actually turning into a mini-series in itself. But now that we've got more information, I will make a part 3. But how does Duke respond to Kanan accusing Rock? Will Duke think, no way, Rock would never do that? Or, based on history, based on what she's done before, which she has seen from her very own eyes, will she think, yeah, it could potentially be Rock? It's going to be very interesting to see Duke's reaction and her influence, whether she's on board with Kanan's thinking, or whether she's thinking the opposite. No doubt, what I think they need to do is a lot more digging. They need to take it to the streets again and see what they can find out, see what people are saying, and follow the trail from what Freddy's crew said back in 406. If that leads them to Rock, fair enough. I just don't think Kanan seeing this is enough for him to be 100% sure. People have law enforcement in their back pockets all the time, especially drug dealers. But again, I've definitely got a lot more to say on it, and we will break it down in the next one. So, moving on to rock supply coming in from the Afghans.
Ain't Ain't shit Rock wouldn't do.
We about to be back up in the big wing.
When and where?
Changing the game all over again.
This bitch gonna pay.
Now, I do think there may potentially be a few week time jump if we're seeing rock supply coming in from Hafiz and the Afghans. In 407, Hafiz mentioned that she's gonna have to wait another month. But if we're seeing a supply come in episode 8, those few weeks could have potentially passed. So timeline wise, episode 8 could actually be jumping ahead a few weeks. Now, in terms of what Rock does with his product, that's the big question. Because in those couple of weeks, no doubt, Unique's only going to be getting stronger. Like Stfano mentioned, those Chinese restaurants don't belong to Rock. She's also lost her corners, losing her customers to Unique, and her transportation side with David is also a mess. So how on earth does Rock change the game again? Now, you never bet against Rock, you never doubt her. We've seen her work her magic before, and I really do believe she can do it again. However, the game is definitely different this time around, not just because of how strong Unique is, but Rock needs to be very careful of Mr. Linguini, who wants to move her to the side. There's also Joyce's death, how do they all cope? In my breakdown for 407, I went through some quotes from Patina Miller, and how she mentioned there is going to be some vulnerability from Rock, which is something we've never seen before. So, how does Rock plan to hit back? Because you can be damn sure, Unique won't be resting on his laurels either. He'll want to finish what he started. Phil Russo will want to avenge Sal Baselli's death. Rock is getting hammered from every single direction you can think of. And usually I would say for the other side, be very careful for coming at someone like Rock. But this time around, I really don't know how she does turn it around, if she can turn it around. In my opinion, Unique is stronger than we've ever seen him. And we haven't even spoken about the potential alliance with Snaps and Pop.
Could be trouble. Could be an opportunity.
Now, we do have a couple of scenes with Snaps and Pop which do match up to the trailer for episode 8. There's also another scene on top of a building which we still haven't seen. But in regards to Snaps and Pop, where do their allegiances lie? From their point of view, they're retired and they don't need to pick a side. Their business is also with Kanan, but it's also an outside investment for just a return. But you can definitely see how both Rock and Unique have gone to Snaps and Pop, because they're the original big dogs. They're very well respected because of who they are, what they've done, and how much power and control they still have. They may be retired, they may not run the powder anymore, but they've still got the other two, power and respect. Now, we weren't actually privy to this conversation that they had back in 407. It seems like they wanted to keep this a bit of a mystery, but I did question, if you're in Snaps and Pop's shoes, who would you guys back? Or rather, who do you guys think they'd be looking at in terms of who will make them the most money? The answer is definitely Unique, at least at this moment in time. And if that is the case in episode 8, then it really is bad news for Rock, because Unique is just going to go from a position of strength to even more strength. But let's talk about Stfano.
When and where?
Now, in terms of Stfano, in my opinion, time is definitely ticking for Mr. Linguini. He wants to move Rock to the side, which definitely isn't happening. Plenty of people have tried in the past and they've all failed. Although it does have to be said, not someone of Stefano's caliber and backing. And he did mention to Marvin, this conversation definitely isn't over. So, we've got him looking quite agitated in terms of news that he's received. He's asking where and when. So, maybe Rock and Marvin have made their move behind Stefano's back to weaken his position, because that's the only way they can get rid of Stfano. They have to soften him up and make him look weak to the other Italian crime families. So they move him aside for the Thomases, without directly cutting off the head of the snake. Because going after a mafia boss in terms of who Stfano is, that's a very big move, which could end up having huge consequences for the Thomases. And I do think Stefano is going to be in a very desperate position come episode 8, 9 or 10. Tony Danza is definitely doing his thing as Stefano, but if it's a choice between him and the Thomases or Rock, we all know who the real winner is. It's just a question of how do the Thomases manage to pull it off without it backfiring on them? That's the question. Now, the other thing is, Unique and Phil Russo also want Stefano to be taken off the chessboard, so it's also falling right into their hands as well. Like I mentioned before, I'm normally someone who would say never bet against Rock, and I'm always rooting for the Thomases, but I really just don't know how they come out at the other end of season 4 unscathed. Let's wait and see. With that being said, that's a breakdown of all things episode 8 from the trailer, which hasn't given us too much, but you can tell they're setting up for a blockbuster finish for season 4. Is there a twist with this whole famous situation? I personally do think there is. I think the writers are definitely toying with the audience, and we probably won't find out right until the very end. Definitely some interesting moments to come across the board for sure. But drop all your thoughts down below in the comment section. Let me know how you see Rock changing the game. Will she be able to get back on top? Or is Unique just way too strong? And is it also time to say goodbye to Stfano? Drop all your thoughts down below in the comment section. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.